as you do it?
Yeah, there's, I mean, tons of ways to trade out there. I mean, that's kind of like yeah, that's the normal part of it all, right? So there's 100 different ways to make trades. So what you have to come down to is just basically uh, a systematic process, right? Everybody's, it's an interesting process, that I've been looking at. So obviously, you've been doing a lot of research because you're looking at, you're getting signals from the AIs, you're getting all that. So you're going to document the entire journey on what you're doing. So
Well,
you,
once again, your academy. Let's just get down to the as my grandmother would say, the brass tacks of it. What exactly do I need to do to get involved in it? What's it going to cost me so I can, balance that into the process? Because I'm also putting in the book what it cost me to learn all this,
yeah, yeah,
and giving someone a price point of, hey, if you only got $1,000 to put into it, these are the steps that you need to take. You may not, you may want to eliminate this, you may want to eliminate that, you may want to do this. So, and I want this to be a comprehensive documentation of the little guy's journey. A lot of people don't have a, 25,000 to stick into it. They may be in the position of me where they're working a full-time job and putting every dime they have into this to prepare for the future.
right, right. Well, yeah, I think, I mean, that's, welcome to, 80% of America.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? That's going to change within the next 10 years
Oh
because
yeah,
there is not any middle class. Middle class is going to be gone.
yeah, yeah. It's a little rough out there.
The,
So
the spread between the wealthy and the poor, the gap is getting astronomical. And I don't want to be caught on the lower end of it, is pretty much where I'm going with this. So,
yeah,
um, like I said, I think you're genuine. I think that your process is simple, and there is some complexity to it, at the same time. Because if it was simple, everybody could do it.
yeah. Well, yeah. So right now, what are you learning? Fibonacci's.
Well, I focus, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Focusing on one thing at a time, figuring one thing out at a time, because if you confuse yourself, then you become part of the noise.
Right.
Because you got a lot of people out there talking that they're just repeating what they hear and not actual real world experience. So that is what I'm working on now is the Fibonacci. Using the Fibonacci, I want to learn some other things that I know I need because I know that there are other indicators that I have to understand. It's not a matter of needing, or wanting. It's a matter of needing in order to make it efficient and profitable.
Yeah.
But the Fibonacci is just a tool to understand where it was at its all-time high, and then understanding where it's at now and where it will get to in the bull market at the worst case scenarios, at the five or at the 618 or
Mm.
whatever the momentum is, and once again the narrative, because the narrative is going to mean something, and then exit strategy. Exit
Yes.
strategy is very important.
Yeah. I mean, so so far, like, so you've studied the fib. What else have you studied?
That is really what I am. I watch a guy, and I don't know if you know who this guy is. I love him though because he comes from driving an Uber, and was the largest Uber driver in the world at one point. Calvin Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, I,
I know
he
Calvin.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what he does, he is into the analytics of it.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
There's a lot to what he does, and he has been in it a long time. Um, but I do watch him, and his information is solid because once again, the stuff that he gives on live, I've looked it up on token metrics, and he is 90% of the time spot on. So
Yeah. Well, he's doing his due diligence, right? He's doing the same thing you guys are doing. So he's giving you the information from token metrics because he's doing all this research, right? And then he's
well,
just
that's what he uses.
yeah, he uses token metrics. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're going to be a token, so he's more like a what's called an investor, right? He's going
yeah,
to dig into a space, which nothing wrong with that. I mean, he's trying to educate. everybody needs to be educated on, putting your money somewhere to do something besides just sitting around. You got to work for money, and then you got to get it to work for you, right? So what are the four cycles, right? You work to make money, work to invest money, then work to buy companies, and then eventually have your money make you money.
Well, my whole life, and everybody else, like you said, 90% of America is taught to go to work, put your money in a bank, and they're never taught to let their money work for them. Well, I'm 46 years old, and I just now got to the mindset where that is my only mindset. That is, I left myself no option but success. And you have to invest in yourself. That is the bottom line.
Right.
If you don't invest in yourself, if you don't invest in yourself, what are you doing?
Right.
You're throwing that away.
Yeah, you only have so much time. You got to make moves. So,
Absolutely.
and I'll tell you, like, kind of like the basics, right? The reason why we kind of came to this system is because the system was developed 7 years ago to educate traders on how to do better, right? Because there's a thousand different ways to trade. There's a thousand, really great indicators. You have all these opportunities with everything out there to make more money. And all I did was, take a systematic approach to whatever they did and solve their problem. So after working with a bunch of traders who spend all day trading and literally researching how to trade, what's the how to find the perfect entry, Fibonacci's, support, resistance, liquidity grabs, watching the bank. Some people have the bank candle, some people have the trade it from 9 a.m. to 10:30 in the morning, one trade a week. Some guys have the trade the London short London at 2 a.m. Central, short it down till 3 4:30, and then play the bounce at 5. There's a thousand different strategies to this thing, right? So you can drive yourself crazy trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I doing? Am I trading in the morning, New York? Are we pumping? And then 50% of the time it dumps, and you're like, well, shit, that doesn't work. Then you're like, all right, I'm gonna short the London, and 50% of the times it goes up, right? So there's all these wonderful ideals, and they're all right. The sad part is they're all right? And this is where people come into the issue, because what I realized was, when I first started was working with traders, was simply adjusting their style and helping them. It's kind of like taking a company and they have a product and they're doing really well, but they suck at marketing. So you clean up the marketing, or their product it's a terrible package, right? So you fix the package. And then you just go into production and you look at how they do a workflow. And all you do is fix the workflow. If you fix a workflow or do anything like that, a company can make 50% more money. So all I really do with traders is I looked at how they trade, indicators that they use, styles that they wanted to do, figured out some very simple steps to eliminate, 20% towards the loss side, put it towards the positive side, and then increase profits by 30%. So at the end of the day, you're making 50% more money. So if you're sitting there going, okay, I want to make, 100,000 a year, and we can give you another 50,000, what would that be worth to you, right? So it's a very, very, yeah, very easy concept, right? So as I moved on, you start getting to the professional traders, and then you move down to the 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 traders that are learning. So these are the guys who've done research for a year, traded for at least a year, and they're in their third and fourth year learning. They've got their candles, they've got their patterns, they understand everything. So kind of where you are in 3 years, right? So
Okay.
those guys came along, and then they were very, like, once again, the same things that they were doing on their side was same thing. They find a strategy, they find something they like, they see it work, and then they try to apply it, right? And then that's pretty much it. So all I had to do was clean up their mistakes. Pretty easy. Same thing the big guys do, except these are little guys. So then I got to crypto, 6 7 years back, and it blew up 5 years back in 2021, and everyone came in. And I was like, hey, these are very simple times. Don't worry about projects. Like, what everyone, you could tell who didn't understand crypto or what crypto was, because they spent their entire time talking about white papers. Like, what?
Oh God.
You're like, you guys do know that, you can sit here. If I had a really good marketing team, I could write a white paper that would,
White paper.
yeah,
Absolutely.
by,
Set you on
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
just kind of like the funniest thing I've ever seen. So I was telling people, like, if you are following any influencer that is telling you to read the white paper, you should unfollow that influencer because they don't understand the real movement. If white papers are meaningless in this world. You need to dig into if you're going to be an investor, right? That's kind of what Calvin Hill is. If you're going to be an investor, then you need to get a hold. You got to dig into the company. You got to find out who runs this company. You got to find out if they have any connections. What is their LinkedIn? Are they going to make any moves? What developers do they have, right? You got to actually become an entrepreneur. Now, if you're an
Well,
investor, you got to dig in, right?
my process is, what, of course, I use token metrics. I go to the website. That's first and foremost. Go
Hmm.
to their website. See how functional the website is, what their direction is, and they're going. If they can describe what their company does in one page or one sentence, they
Right.
have to have, it has to be, it, it, it has to have some type of,
Plug and play.
yeah, absolutely.
That's really all it
Secondly,
is. Plug and play.
yeah.
You know.
Secondly, you look at who is running it, who's behind it, and what their background is. If it's just rich people, oh my goodness, get away from it.
Right.
They're just, because all they're doing is wanting to, I wouldn't say rug pull, but
No, no,
they're
they're doing a normal business, and that basically what that is the same thing as Apple, right? Steve Jobs didn't
yeah,
create all the great things about Apple. He simply hired a really bunch of smart people and then took their ideals.
yeah. Well, and one example that I give people is, everybody's on this Fetch AI thing, but if you look at the people behind Fetch AI, every one of the people that are behind Fetch AI, especially the person that owns it or that's starting, the CEO, every company he's had, he has, you know, built it and bankrupted.
Yeah.
It's like that's his business model.
Hmm. I mean, you're not
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, the sad part is
So
you're not wrong.
yeah, so I look at that and those are the things that I look for when I look at it and I find a token or a crypto that I like. First thing I do, website. Can they explain what they do? Does it have a function? Does it have a direction? And then I go straight to who the people are. If I see a cartoon character and they're not willing to show who they are, immediately bye bye. You know what I mean? I've seen several cryptos where I go to their website, and the website looks great. I can build a great website, especially with all the technology. But if they're not willing to show their face and show what they do and explain who they are and what their background is, oh man, it's just not worth it if you're an investor. Now,
Right.
as a trader, that may be good because that could be a very volatile uh, space there. And, if you know how to short and long, that could be good understanding, and that's what you do well. And that's what I want to learn. I want to learn uh, when it's consolidated, how to spot where it's going sideways. I understand that is a sign of consolidation,
Hmm.
but I understand more. And your process is I just like how you do things. It's very simple.
Yeah, I mean, so the whole thing comes down to, just after dealing with everybody, advancing it, right? So as we went through the time, we realized as we moved forward, we went from, you know, uh, semi traders to, the crypto trader, someone who's never done anything, never had trading view, you kind of go through the elevations, right? So we started at the top, worked our way back, and then we just got to where, you had to teach people that were never tried something, never even thought about trading view or how things work, et cetera, et cetera. So it just got to the point where we had to design stuff that fits their thing, right? So after about a year and a half of putting programs together and simple things, I just realized that there's 1,000 ways to trade, and then there's 1,000 different types of trades, right? So we first came out, we were simple indicators to help you find really easy trades, and then we started on margins, which was only 10% or 10x leverage, right? And we'd have to have a 3 to 4% move in order to make money because the goal is to make 30 to 40% per trade. And so you had to be very good at finding momentum, finding the movement, and really piecing it together. So that's where we kind of were built. And then as time went on, our leverage went from 10 to 50 to 100. And then I realized, like, well, man, that now we don't even need that 3% move. We need a 1% move. So we started critiquing into what we call like sniping, right? Which is just grabbing a piece of the pie as it pumped, right? So we make I mean, you can make 100% in 3 minutes, right? So as time went on, evolution, where people coming in, it was the ability to understand what was happening, right? Because as I kept teaching and training people, I realized that it wasn't the systems that were failing or the ideals, right? Because you can be a terrible trader and make money if you have a structure, right? So for instance, this is the system that every trader uses, right? It's kind of like it always makes me laugh when I talk about it, but it's a very simple structure, right? So you find support and resistance, you find your Fibonacci's, you locate, liquidity areas, and then you place a trade. And when you place that trade, you simply say, okay, I'm going to take $1,000 and I'm going to put it on this trade. And when that trade happens, I'm going to look for my profits to be 300% because they're looking at the next target. So they set their target for if it's above 300% to 500%, and then they just let it go. And then they'll set 10 trades like that of $1,000 each, or that's their goal for the week. And the goal at the end of the week is that 5 of the trades go negative and get stop lossed out and you lose 5,000. And the other 5 trades, you have 3 of them hit their target, which is 300%, right? So then you have 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, you have 9,000. Then you have 2 of the trades that, end up pushing close to their targets, but they consolidate and you just close them out. So maybe you make 1,000 or maybe you break even, right? So we'll say, take in maybe two to 4,000. So at the end of it, they're making, 10, 9 to, an average was about 8,000, but they make about 9 to 12,000 bucks, right? On the trades, 9 to 12,000, and they lose 5,000. So at the end of it, they average 4 to 6,000 a week. Now, it's there. That's to me, that's like terrible trading, but to them, they're like, yo, it's like if I
They're
do,
making
yeah,
6 hours a week.
yeah, they're making 200 grand a year. So I mean, you can't argue with data. And then that's when I realized that it wasn't really about that's why all the systems work. That's why this is why it's so addicting, and it's also why 98% of traders lose money, right? It was very simple. It was the fact that it's easy to make money trading because the only reason you continue to trade is because one day you saw yourself make a massive trade, right? There was a day that you had a big gain and you're like, oh, and then you lost it all. And then you had another day, right? So it always starts off like this. You start off with $100 or maybe 500, and then boom, it moves up to 1,000. You're like, man, I just doubled my money. You feel good, right? Then you start trying futures out a little bit. You're like, all right, let's step this up. Then you take $500 and it bounces up to 500, and it only took a couple hours. And you're like, oh man, this is I'm gonna be a millionaire in a week, right? So then they get in and then they're like, all right, let me put another couple $100 in, and then they make another couple hundred, and they're like, oh man, I'm killing this, right? And then they get into one trade and it like jumps and it goes crazy and it goes from like $300 to 1,500, $2,000. I've seen guys go from 5,000 to 15 to $20,000 in like a minute and a half, and then they're like, man, this is it. And then the next trade they put in is like a $2,000 trade, because if they can take 300 to 1,000, well then they can surely take 2,000 to 20, right? And then they get in, they take the 2,000, and then boom, it goes the other way, and they're liquidated. They're like, all right, that's okay. Let me get another 1,000, and they put it in, and they get liquidated. Then they put another 1,000 in, and they double up that money, right? But here's the mentality. The problem is people don't remember the big losses. They only remember the time they won. And the reason why 98% of traders fail is because They don't have a systematic way of trading, and they trade all on emotion and hopium, right?
Sure.
That's where the disconnect is. So when I realized that after talking to people for the last year and a half, I was like, we don't need to teach a trading program. We need to teach a profit taking program. Because no matter how much I teach you, I can show you how to do a trade that wins every time, and you will still go out and try to find another trade. Like it's kind of if I gave you a job that you went out and it's like, all right, here's how to make $1,000 a week, right? And you only worked 2 hours a day, right? Me, if I wanted $4,000, then I would work 4 times the hours,
Sure.
right? But
Absolutely.
yeah,
That would be the smart thing to do.
all right. But 90% of people would go, okay, this is making 1,000. What else can I do? And they'll take the profits from what they make and put it in other investments that are not as good and then lose all their money. And it's like a cycle of life. You know what I'm saying? The cycle of life. It's funny to me. It's like,
Well,
you know,
I gotta be honest with you. This is probably gonna it kind of shake you up a little bit. I haven't done a trade yet because
mhm.
I have not done one trade. I have paper traded and not done well at it because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, then the problem is, the real problem is as you start to try to understand it, which what you're doing is learning. You start with Fibonacci, and then from Fibonacci, you learn candles, and then you learn patterns, right? And the sad part is after,
I'm using Fibonacci right now.
mhm,
That's what
yeah, and at the end of the day, you can spend a year, you know, watching everything. You can take a year and master the candles, the patterns, and everything that you can possibly know about trading. And the saddest part about it is it's 62% accurate.
that's not good numbers when you're talking profit because you're losing
Mhm.
38% when you can knock that down to 5%.
Right. But see, in the world of trading, even if you are only winning 6 out of 10 trades, right? Listen to these guys, right? They'll tell you all the time. If you ask a good trader, like, man, how's your week go? Yeah, I did my 6 out of 10. And to us, it's like, to me, that's terrible, right?
Yeah,
But in reality, it's not a bad ratio if the losses weren't 100% on the four, right? If you learn how
yeah,
to, it's like anything in the world. It's like poker. If you can eliminate your losses when you lose a hand to minimums and maximize your pots when you win, doesn't matter what cards you have, right?
got you, got you.
So when I looked at them all and I kind of like pieced it all together, I realized that at the end of the day, it really comes down to a mentality of understanding, how to do what basically every, investor, right? That's the funniest thing in the world. Is like everyone's an investor and not a trader, but then they make the number one rule of investing. They all blow the number one rule, right? It's like sometimes I just sit around like it'd be like a
Don't
guy who's an
yeah,
expert in,
don't complain.
yeah, the guy who's an expert in like, making a burger, but then the burger is never cooked right. And you're like, huh? Right? You just don't understand it. So everyone's an investor and they come in and invest. But they miss the entire thing is that at the end of the day, the number one way to invest or how to invest to make a million is all compound interest, right? And nobody gets that. Nobody understands on how to compound their money. And then I realized, like, man, it's the education level of pure investing that is missing here. Right? It doesn't matter how many times you hit a big trade, you will just give it back anyways, right?
Well, my thought process is simply keep it. I guess you say keep it, analytical. Don't make it emotional, and
Mhm.
that's what my focus is to keep it analytical and not emotional.
Right.
Say numbers, and that's what you were talking about the other night. Is set a number, and that number is finite. That's it.
Mhm.
And if it gets to that, cut it and let it go, and then wait for the next dip. So I understood that. That
Yeah. I mean, because
resonated with me, and that's exactly the strategy that I need.
Yeah, it just comes down to reality. Like the only way to like, execute and make money is to go back to the original process, right? They're not You don't need to reinvent the wheel, just push it. So what we did was we developed a very simple system that anyone can follow. And then we took that system and it had 10 trades for longs, 10 trades for shorts. And then you had different leverages, you had different things. And then I realized after 4 or 5 months of really good traders and new traders coming in is that they couldn't grasp the concepts of when they were moving from time frames on how to stay, in a zone, right? So it's kind of like, having a guy come into your restaurant and you're like, all right, this is how we make this burger. This is how we make this burger. And into your head is like, well, it's a patty and two buns. The only difference is, amount of pickles and cheese, but guys can't keep that down. You got to learn how to make one item at a time. And then I realized that if they have so much thinking going on, then they don't execute, right? Because the only thing that matters is execution. So then I designed it to where it was literally one trade. So you only do one trade. The one trade happens 10 times before an explosion, and it just operates over and over and over. And the only difference in understanding which trade, which time you're going to make it, is understanding the volume, the price action, and the indicators to let you know when it's time to make that trade. But the concept is it's the same thing. So when you see red, when you see green, 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 then you're in. When it's very simple, right? So that's where we built the indicators to just implement the best possible. So the indicators are built to find the 80 percentile of trades that would be winners on each of their own level. So if you have an 80% chance of that indicator giving you a win at a certain level, and another indicator is another 80%, and another indicator hits at another 80. Well, if you have all those odds in your favor, and then you know that it's a 3% move, but you go for a 1% move to cut um, your risk in by 2/3, and then there's other mathematical equations to it, then you can simply win every time, right? And then once we built that system, it wasn't a trading system, it's a profit taking system.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all it is. And what happened was once we built that, that's where everything kind of like came into a zone, because now when I asked them, because you'd ask a student in a course and say, hey, okay, well, what are these trades, right? And they'd have 5 different trades they did, and they were 5 different ways, right? And then you'd have to go look at the trade. You'd have to, because we do trade evaluations. The whole point of what we do is really like work on the fact that how what do we go over your trade, right? The reason why the academy is so successful is because we do trade review, meaning every time you make a trade, we see your trade, we review your trade, we give you information on your trade, and you do 10 trade reviews, and we go back. If you can't make 300% on after 10 trades, then you're not doing the basics right, right? I mean, you should be averaging about 800% after 10 trades. So now when we talk to people, we have a very simple process. Like I can ask one question, well, what was your leverage? Okay, well, that's wrong. Okay, when did you enter? Okay, that was wrong, right? I mean, I don't have to spend an hour reviewing a chart or a trade. All I need to know is 3 specific questions now. And if they didn't follow those 3 things, well, then that's why the trade didn't work, right? So now we're just to the point where we only do is execution, right? That's it. So when people come into the system, it's not a trading system. So I don't even need to know all the other shit that you're coming up with, like, oh, fair value gaps or the liquidity grab. I was tracking the Fibonacci's. I don't even need all that. All I need to know is that did that happen? Did that happen? Did you enter properly? Now, if you didn't do that, then the rest of it doesn't matter anyways.
Well, I was watching another guy, and I tried to emulate, because he took a chart, he took a candle chart, and he opened up the chart and it said, takes a wick on the first candle,
Mm-hmm.
and he ran a bar across and made the bar on like the trading view, and he
Mm-hmm.
highlighted blue. And then on the bottom, he did the same thing. He says, these are your entry points, whether you want to short or long, because that's the top of the range in which it traded in that day, and this is the bottom of the range in where it traded in that day. And entering or
No.
you know, so and that seems simple, but there was a lot of other things that he went into that then I got lost in the sauce at that point.
Yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, it's so, it's funny to me. It's like, so these are just daily ranges, right? And it's kind of like, okay, so there's a lot of things that go into that, right? So first of all, you're in a daily range, okay? Now the question is, while you're in your daily range, right? How much is it pulling back, right? So a lot of these guys are out here that are trading or teaching trading or talking about trading are basically running concepts of simplicity. Because if you're in a spot trader, right, it doesn't matter how many times you're wrong because eventually it goes up. Like my favorite thing is when a guy's like, "Yo, we just hit, man. We got it for 80%." You're like, "Awesome." They're like, and then you go look at the trade and it took like 2 weeks. I told you,
Well,
know.
if you're trading $10,000 and it does that, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm looking to like you said, what you do, and I think I get the gist of what you're talking about because it only has to go up 1% or 2% for you to make gains. So I know you're not waiting for a certain zone, you're waiting for a certain pattern. You're
Hmm.
waiting for a consecutive pattern and for that pattern to continue. Thanks for
Right.
my
Yeah.
input and vicinity of what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. I mean, because all the like I said, like the funniest thing in the world is that all their ideals work, right? It's just an they don't really there needs to be a lot going on. That's what I'm saying. Like people only remember the good moment, right? And then everyone goes to a thing and marks out the daily candle. They're like, okay, here's a range. Oh, it touched the bottom and went up here, right? But they had no idea that if they did that consecutively, that it's only 6 out of 10 times it does that. But you tell yourself that it works, right? But you don't understand the concept of doing 6 out of 10 trades and expecting for those trades to go the other way. So you're not emotionally educated on what your process is, right? And they're all the same process. They're all willing to lose 5 out of 10 trades if every once in a while the particular trade goes their way. That is kind of where they don't really get into the teaching or the education of emotions, right? And that's why everyone's so emotional, right? Everyone's in the same boat. They're all doing the same thing, and then they're confused on what they're doing, and it's the same thing over and over, right? So that's why I say like I stopped because I could show a guy how to do one trade, right? I can teach you how to do one short over and over and over, and you'll make 100 grand. But what happens is while guys are waiting for that one short, they start doing other trades, right? So they're like, oh, I wanted to do a long. Like, why? Longs are risky, right? Why not just get paid off the guaranteed money? But people can't do that because they want to be in other trades. So then we started teaching, how to do longs, right? The best way to do a long, the most positive way to do a long, simple stuff. And then we started showing simple ways to win every time, right? And then every single time, the guys would go do other types of trades. And I was always complex because I was like, oh, okay, because they would post a trade that they lost, and it was like, okay, well, that trade didn't even make sense. But they would explain, that they saw it, they felt it, there was a fair value gap, there was et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, well, did you look at your indicators to just confirm that, right? Then I was like, you can use indicators. You don't have to follow the system or the structure, but you can, verify what you think is going to happen besides deciding that you're going to do it emotionally, right? And then they realize like, oh shit, you're right. I should have at least confirmed it. Like to me, that's common sense. Like if I have indicators that tell me like how things are going and I think something's going to do something, I would go look at the things that tell me yes or no, right? Like that's kind of like basics, right? But they don't do that. They just start trading different ways. And it's like, and my whole thing was like, okay, well, if you had a trade, right? And let's say you have $100 and every time you do this trade, it gets 50%. And you're like, you know what? But I make $50. I do this trade once a day, right? Okay, you make your $50 a day. And then you're like, and you say to them, and they're like, yeah, I need to make 300 a day. So then they start doing all this risky stuff. And I say, well, okay, well, if you needed to make 300 bucks a day, how many times have you done that trade? Oh, 100 times. Have you won every time? Oh, 99 out of 100. Okay. Did you ever think about instead of trading for 100 bucks, you ever think about putting 600 in?
There you go.
And it blows their mind because they're like, "Oh shit, damn, that would have been smart."
My other objective here, and this is for the process of understanding your. This is the reason why I'm going to do it this way. Is once again, this is also directed towards my journey and documenting the journey. I'm going to start out with $500 to $1,000, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build that. I'm going to progressively build that. But I need a system that is number one comprehensible to the layman. You get that? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of where,
not everybody's understanding of what may seem to be common sense to me may not be common to someone else. That's why the term common sense to me is kind of so vague because what may be simplicity to me is complex to someone else. So someone's
right.
understanding and someone's knowledge, everybody it varies. So I want it to where if you come into this just like I am from the very bare bones beginning and don't know dick about it,
Mm-hmm.
you can learn it.
Yeah.
Just like this person can learn. I don't give a damn if you're flipping burgers or flipping turds.
Right.
You can do this.
Yeah. And that's kind of that's the entire process, right? So once we figured out, and this is kind of like the last couple months, I was just realizing that, trading doesn't matter. Like what I need to educate you on is how to actually make money, because you're going to keep trying, you're going to do other things the way you want to do it until you stop your human nature, your human behavior to be a risk taker, a gambler, right? Or to push the odds instead of just doing what basically is a higher percent play, right? So that's why we have the system the way we have it, is because it's designed to be one on one. It's designed so the first 4 weeks you learn one trade. It's the same steps over and over and over. And as you start off, you learn the basic steps, right? So it's like, cha cha, cha cha cha, 1, 2, cha cha cha. Right. Yeah. And then from there, then we add a little bit of information like, okay, this is why the 1 2 2 cha cha works, right? And then you're like, oh, okay. And then you get a little more information, right? And then you start seeing, okay, this indicator will now confirm this. And you're like, okay. So then you start just taking 50% profits and you're like, oh, okay, winner, 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 right? And you guys who've never traded in their life, after a week of, doing basics, come in and they're like, they will post, 10 trades and lose two of them. And the other ones, they'll hit their targets, right? And they're just like, and what's happening is they have no emotional attachment. They don't have um, anything that holds them where they're like, hoping, right? There's no like guessing of what's happening. They entered a trade, they put a stop loss, they put a target. It's either going to target or stop loss. There is no other option. It doesn't matter what it does. You just need to document how it did what it did and what were the results at the end. And that's it. You're an auditor. You're just an information taker. And you place these trades. Yeah, you're an auditor, and you're like, okay,
I love that because that makes complete sense. All you're doing is observation.
that's it.
You're observing and then making an action on your observer, of what you observe, and you see a specific action and you take action to that action. It's a response to the market action.
Correct. And all you're doing is like once you're in, you already know why you're in, right? You already know where you're staying. You already know what your target is. You already know what your job is to do, right? So this is why we have.
The thing about what you're saying is it's really not even taking an action. It's actually you're taking a non-action because we've already set the parameters.
Right.
All we're doing is engaging it, and you let the parameters take the action. It's so simple.
And what this does for you is once you place the entry, and you place the stop loss and the target, and your job is to make, your 3 trade entries, right? So you're trained to do 1 entry here, 1 entry here, right? So now what happens is you just execute the trade and then it does what it does. And at the end of it, you take the result, right? So after you do this, 10 times, you see that, oh, I made 300%. And then you move on, you do it 10 more times, right? And then eventually you realize that you're executing at a high level. And then there's no emotions to it because you don't really care because you're not that invested in it. You're just documenting the results. And then when the results continue to come back positive, then as you increase your bags based on profits, so you're not even putting in your own money, you're putting in profit money, and you're starting to increase your profits, bags on there, pretty soon after a month, you've gone from trading $10 to now you're trading $100 bag. And all you do is you enter the same way, you set the same parameters, it closes the same way, and you expect a certain result at the end of every 10 trades because it's what you've seen the last 10 times, right? So out of the 100 trades, you've already seen it happen. So then it continues to happen, and all you do is slowly increase your bag, and you just continue to hit. Now, as you move along, the first 4 weeks is removing emotions because that's what the problem is. The next 4 weeks is executing and learning how to increase the bag and your positions at the right time versus the wrong time to increase profits, right? Better entries, better targets, and then you start learning how to move your stop losses or why you would look for a bigger profit margin. And next thing you know, you're able to take your 500% gains out of every 10 trades and turn it into 800, 900, 1000%, right? And you're not doing anything different except very micro managed things that you're supposed to do as the auditor. You're supposed to, oh, I need to make this a little better. So really all you're doing is just sharpening your tools, right? Once you learn how to use them. At the end of the day,
and I'm actually a technician. I'm a sales tech.
yeah.
I work for a company. I'm sure you've heard of them. It used to be called Purilators.
Mhm.
I deal with the filters for Tesla.
Oh, okay, all
Tesla
right.
and the Rivian electric vehicles. So I run the oil filters for Tesla and Rivian. But I work for a company called Manhole. But I'm a sales tech, so I understand the process of sharpening tools.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's everything is about making it a little better.
You obviously are good at what you do. I mean, like I said, I've been watching you, and I'll be on tonight. What time you coming on tonight?
We're doing 7 o'clock. So Monday and Tuesdays we do 7 right now, 7 to 9, just to keep an education.
And you're located where?
Chicago.
Okay, so I'm in North Carolina. I'm in the old southern state. I'm in the South.
Yeah, I like North Carolina.
You're on the same time schedule, correct?
Yeah. We're both central.
Okay, yeah. I'll be at work and I go in at 3.
Hmm.
I work from 3 to 12. So I work the second shift.
You should be Eastern.
I have my headphones in and I watched you last night. It was impressive.
Yeah, and it's
Let me
just go ahead.
let me ask you this. To be a part of your class, what's the process?
So the first process, we always like to do a phone call because we like to know where you're at, as far as like skill level, right? Because there's different. We have boot camps and we have a full course, and then we have a normal trading course, and then we have the intro course, right? And what I realized, yeah, and the whole reason why is because if I have professional traders that want to take their position and say, hey, I want to eliminate 50% of my losses, and I want my gains to be another 50%, right? It's a very simple thing to do. Yeah, yeah. Right.
I didn't have to bottom of the totem pole, my friend. But I can tell you, I've never done anything in my life and not been good at it because that is where my mindset. I'm a little OCD. When I
Hmm.
get focused on something, when I get zeroed in and dialed in, there is no failure.
Right.
I played professional golf for several years.
Oh, you might know. I got a
And
couple.
I had only been playing. I went from playing, and I didn't start playing until I was 24 years old. Okay, I
Nice,
started playing on a tour by the time I was 27.
nice.
So that was telling you how OCD focused I am. And I was also an athlete as a kid. So I played football, baseball, basketball.
Yeah, it's a certain type of, a lot of guys that come to crypto have those instincts because, it's risk taking, but it's also it's the environment of the execution, right? Guys who
You're
put in
competing
the
in a
time.
world of investors.
Hmm, hmm,
That's intriguing to me. I am competing with people out there that have billions.
hmm, hmm. Yeah, yeah, they're
To
out
me,
there.
to me, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, I can make a living doing it if I follow a process. Let
Yes.
the process work. Don't deviate. That is, and anybody can succeed at anything they do if they don't deviate from the process.
Right. And that's kind of what the key is, right? So that's where we've changed everything around and now we just work from the beginning of a cycle because we used to, when guys would sign up for the full program, I would spend most of my days like emailing and texting people, "Hey man, how you been? Where you're at?" Because I feel like you spent some good money to take the course, but you're not like, you're not making, an hour or two a week to get where you need to go. And then I feel like, hey, how's it going? It's kind of like it's kind of like, you hire a trainer. You're like, hey, I'm going to pay you, X amount of money for the month. Make sure I lose weight. And then like every day you're not coming to the
You
gym.
don't put in the work.
And the trainer's like calling you up. Hey man, you coming in today? Right?
Yeah, he's still
Like,
down eating that burger that you were
yeah.
talking about.
So to me, I'm like, man, I don't want to spend all my time. I got to that point. I was like, look, I don't want to feel bad that you paid for something, but you're not even showing up. But so
Well,
then I started talking to people.
just from the knowledge that I have, I've only been doing this 2 months.
Hmm.
Okay, I mean, I'm talking about the wholesale space. I'm talking about trading. So that's just telling you how much reading I've done. And I work a full time job. I don't have no days off. I work 7 days a week.
Hmm.
Okay, so just from what we talked about and what I do understand about it, that's the reading that I do. When I get off work at 12 o'clock, I come here and I sit at my computer till 3 o'clock in the morning. That I do every single night. And that is my process. I told myself that this is a job.
Yeah, that's what it is. You have to
This
treat
is
it
a
like a
job.
job.
This is not fun. This is not a game. This is
Right.
setting myself up for the future. This
Yeah.
is a job.
That's what I tell guys. Say, listen, you have to do the system as if you work for the VC Crypto Nation. Your job is
Absolutely.
to do what the academy asks you to do. It's not for you to come up with, we've all had jobs where we're like, man, if they just did this, and we don't really care. We just walked in, okay, what do you want? Hit the green button, red button, write this paperwork. All right, bro. Like we
Exactly.
never, we don't go in there trying to change everything. We just get paid, and you have to treat it the same way.
Why can't people have the understanding that, you know, don't they see that you're doing this? Don't they see that your process is working?
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
that's
that mindset alone, if you can't comprehend the fact that this guy's doing it and what he's doing, he's telling us and he's teaching us. If they follow that, why can't they see that the success will come? People, sad thing is, they want to go from from drooling, slobbering, and not even crawling to running a marathon. They don't know how to take baby steps.
well, that's human
Slow and
nature.
steady wins the race.
Human nature is to evolve, right? And that's kind of like
Amen.
that's the entire thing, right? I mean that's and you're not going to stop that because it's kind of like it's why we're in crypto, right? We're in crypto because we see technology that's going to change the world at a moment that it's not even, in the world really, right? So we're ahead of the game. So for us it's like if this can do this, then it got to be another way, right? So it's always you always want to, it's the ability of never stop learning. The problem is guys don't understand the concept of testing uh, equations before they, do them, right? So another thing would be guys would put big amounts of money into some type of ideal before they do the correct, testing, right? You always have to evaluate something, test it, get results, get data, right? It's data, right? And just like in your company, every time you guys are doing something, you get a bunch of data, and it's either positive or negative, or it's not enough positive to do it. But before you do any decision, every company in the world knows they need data to make a decision. And what people don't understand is out here, they see something, they go out there, they don't know how to evaluate properly, which is the problem. That's why the way we do the academy now is I'm teaching more based on an educational level of how to just product test, investment testing, why something works, why it doesn't work, because I already know they're going to go try 1,000 different things, and eventually they'll come back around and say, "Geez, I mean, maybe if I would have just focused here, right?" But that's a process that takes time. It's a human nature to always want to be better, and the one thing that we do is we try new things, right? And then we always come back and say, "Well, that thing was, man, that first round wheel really does work. I don't need anything. I don't need anything else." Right? But how many times have we tried to reinvent the wheel? Like it's human nature, no matter what you do. So that's why now what we do is we teach a very simple philosophy. The first thing is emotions, right? Because emotions are what drive you to take risk, and risk is where you lose money, right? But if you learn to evaluate, learn how to properly manage risk, learn all the things to protect you from yourself, then the system works even better, right? So that's kind of what the beauty of the system is, that it's designed to educate you in risk management. And then once you get through the basics of the system, it gives you profit to learn with. And then eventually you come around and say, oh shit, man, all I have to do is keep pushing here and I keep stacking, all compounding. And next thing you know, I'm where I want to be. And it becomes a natural thing versus you fighting it, right? But it took a little bit of time to develop that. And that's why, we spent the last 3 years developing this academy for new people, because it was important to execute the system. So I used to be where I would be a crypto influencer. I could tell you about every project that was going to blow up. I could point out projects that were going to go. I mean, I told people put 10,000 in Doge at an eighth of a penny, you'd be a millionaire. I told everyone put 10 grand in SafeMoon, you'd make another million. I told people ACH at under a penny would go to 19 cents. And guys were like, dude, how is this guy calling 19 X's every time? This guy's killing it. But that's just research. But then I realized that that's kind of like you know people that now they need understanding, right? And then I realized that people would make money, but then they go start trading and they wouldn't make enough money, they lose it all, or they were hodling, watching their money go up 10 times and then back down to zero. And I'm like, what do you? The concept of understanding how to make money was really what's missing, is everyone has emotions and nobody knows how to just simply capitalize. So that's what we've, really done over the last, year and a half, was build a product that would be based on what I've already know. I've talked to thousands of people and they're always doing the same mistake. And then, at the end of the day, I was like, here's the problem. You guys are just too emotional and you don't know how to curb your instincts, right? So now we teach something that's a very simple thing where it's so simple, you're just repeating it, and it becomes where you know, it's just like going to work. Okay, put this here, put this here, put this here, put this here. Yeah.
One thing and get them to understand, if you had invested your money in crypto, period,
Mhm.
you know that it can go to nothing.
Oh yeah.
So why not understand that, take the odds out of it? Why take the odds out of it? Because you've already took the step of putting your money in it.
Hmm.
So if you're willing to do that, then why don't you take the step of understanding you've already let this money go?
Yeah.
Now let the process go. Let
Yeah.
the process of the emotion go, and then let the process take place.
It's hard. It's hard.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
But it's simple.
I know, but see, what they say, right? You have to, yeah. This is I learned this a long time ago, right? And this is kind of where, when I was a kid, I had a good background because my mom was an entrepreneur, my dad was an entrepreneur. So I grew up where everything, it was just business. Like there wasn't, breakfast talk wasn't about, the news. It was talk about, oh, there's a oh, I got this new customer, I got a new client coming in. Oh, here's some new designs. Oh, I'm launching this new. So all I knew was business. Like I don't know anything else. So when I look at this, I learned a long time ago that simple is a lot different than easy, right? Because people always, you're gonna always hear when people are the most pissed off or the most hurt or the most shocked is when they're like, "It was so simple," and I would hear that all the time, right? Yeah, yeah. I go by V, but they call me VC.
Give me
Yeah.
one second. Hey, son, could you run up to that smoke shop with Rose down up there, the new one? Yeah, the one on Yankton. Yeah. Not there. It's, you go get on Yankton, take a right, it's up on the hill. Yeah, you go past the gas station, it's up on the hill. Run up there and grab me one of my coffee, please. I'm sorry,
You're good. You're good.
I took my son to the store.
Yeah, and a lot of times,
So I'm trying to soak all this up, and I have so much going on.
you're good, you're good. But everyone would always yell, it always made me laugh because it was like, it was so simple, and I'm just like, you never hear anyone go, it was easy, right? They don't, it's because easy is where you can like put anything together and you can put a washer and a nut with a lock washer and a nut, or a lock washer with a nut and then a washer and a nut, or a lock washer with a nut and a nut. Either way, it's going to do what it's supposed to do, right? Yeah, it's going to tighten down, right? So you can make the mistake of putting it backwards, forwards. It doesn't matter because it works, right? It's like, oh yeah, oh that's on a little, that's crooked right there, but it's all good, right? And you always survive. It's when something is simple, which means all you have to do is follow this instructions, and we gave you the instructions, and we gave you a video, and we showed you how to do it, and then all we did was ask you to follow the three things that we just showed you, but you didn't do that. And now, because this one piece is here, the entire thing is destroyed, right? And that's how it goes. It's when it's simple is where you need to be very careful, because simple can become the end of it very quickly, right? That's how simple is a dangerous place to be, right? Because simple makes you feel that it's easy, and if you think it's easy, you lack focus, or you wing it and you think because it's simple, right? And then you make one mistake, and next thing you know, there's a wrench inside the machine, and what happens when that happens? You tear up your entire machine, right? And that's the point: is that simple is never simple, right? It's where you need to be dedicated and focused the most, and that's why people get destroyed all the time, is because it's too simple. And if it's simple, they make the mistake of thinking it's easy, and that's how they get beat up.
There's something wrong, or they get this.
Too good to be true.
They're confused.
Yeah, they get confused, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's human nature. Like it's just like I said, it's all human nature. It's always
The
gonna.
reason
Oh,
we
we got a
make
nice
it
glass here.
complicated is what we do is because we find something that's simple that works, and then we think that we put our ignorance into the mix. Saying, well, we can do this, and this can increase it. No, don't fix it. Like you said, don't reinvent the wheel. Just push it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's it. So that's why, what we do and how we piece it together. It's really built on a whole different ideal. It's built on why people can't be profitable, right? And then the structure of how we trade and all we do is just, it teaches you such a simple way to do it that eventually it becomes monotonous, and it's a job, and you're just placing orders, and you're like boom, 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 and then you look down and you're like, oh, I made 1,000. Then boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh shit, I'm at
Now,
5,
do I
right?
have to use Nextd or can I use BX?
Yeah, you can. I mean, Mexi is just, you can use any exchange that you want. The only difference is, like, as long as they have the leverage, right, that's supposed to be there, right? The reason why we use Mexi is because Mexi has high leverage on everything. I mean, dude, I was shorting the USDC dollar one day. Like, yeah. Remember when it was like becoming, it was becoming unattached, it was unpinned, and we were on there, and it was like, yo, it was short the dollar. And it was funny to us because it was like the craziest thing to do, and we did I think it was like 100x on there. We're getting like 50 or 100x.
So you guys have tried this process on the hardest market that's possible to make gains, and you
Yeah.
guys are making gains with this system.
Oh yeah, the system was built in the crab market. Like, that's when the system was built. The system was built in the run of 2022, right, which was the end of everything. So the original system was built in the 2021, in October, November, in the worst crypto market. And
Oh
then
yeah.
we ran it all the way through 2022, when there was no liquidity, right, through the summers. Like, and we do most of it's weird, but we did all our trading and all our evaluations from May to August, right? If people understand trading, like, once you get to June to August, there's no money, right? So we'd look and say, okay, how much can you make if there's nothing, right? So I was trading when the crypto market had 1 trillion in it, right? And we were making 50 to 100% gains every day. Like, it was, so that's, and there was nobody. Like, I mean, that's the end of the road. If you guys don't know, the end of the road is
Realistically,
900 million.
from my position, realistically, and this is, and this is, I'm just taking this as an opinion.
Yeah.
But realistically, from where I'm at, which is pretty much at the ground floor, when can I start executing trades? And I'm not saying executing trades and being, massively successful at it, but just being able to execute trades and understanding how to execute them, setting my stop losses.
Oh yeah. I mean, so the basics, right? Like literally, because when you come in, you set all you watch a couple videos, right? Videos take they're 15 minutes, some of them are 30 minutes. So it takes people normally if they're, if they got the earbuds in and they're just putting the YouTube channel thing on, they're just listening, right? They can knock that out in a day or two, right? So the first 3 days is just getting the videos down, right? Then you go through after that, you go through your indicators, right? We set up your indicators with you, right? And at that point, you've already seen the videos, you already see how it all works, you've already seen all the different ways, the simple way to make a trade 5 times over, and now you get your indicators, right? Then you do a one-on-one. We walk you through setting up the trade, setting up your stop loss. So realistically, at the end of 4 days, you should be making trades, right? And at the end of 7 days, we should have a successful trading rate at that time. And within the first 2 weeks, we should have 10 trades done and evaluate you to where you're at, whether you're either up 100% or you're up 300%, right? So it's a very quick process. That's the beauty of it is because you're not doing anything except one trade. And the only thing you're waiting for that one trade to do is to give you confirmation with two other indicators to say that trade is valid right now. And that's it. Like that's how easy it is.
Just waiting for the indicator to have your entry point.
Yeah,
So you
so
already got your indicator set, you've already got everything, and you're not waiting for it to get to a certain spot on the chart. You're
yeah,
just waiting for those indicators to show you that it's ready, that it's primed.
right. And you can see as you watch it, you can see where, like I'm in IOTA right now. IOTA's been on the 1 hour. It's tested. Yeah, it's tested the 200 moving average 4 times, right? Now, most investors would have been like, okay, I'm pulling in there, right? Now, if I look at my indicators, I can see that on one of my 1 hour pullback, the pullback was on the third time that IOTA tested the 200 moving average, and then we entered because at that point our indicator said it's time to enter, right? Now, on other times, if you enter and you're like, oh, there's a test, and then it retests, and you're like, okay, it's going to bounce, and then it doesn't bounce, and it comes back, and then you're like, whew, I'm getting scared here. Right? How many times are going to retest this level, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen, because you don't know if it's picking up volume, you don't know if it's going to make its move. You're not prepared, so now you're kind of like, all right, I got to be careful here, right? So what we do is the indicator waits for it to get through its uncertainty area, and then decides like, okay, this is where it's actually building momentum. So we get in on the push that we want to get in on. So we're entering the same, most of the time we're getting the same type of entries, except we're eliminating the risk of the liquidity grab before it happens. When you're just marking an area, right? I can sit here, I can chart out a chart and say, okay, if you're going to enter here, you're going to get into IOTA here, here, and here, and those points will hit. Now you do have a 40% chance that they could, do a liquidity grab at that moment and then wreck you depending on your leverage. So that's why they do it. Market makers know what you're looking at because they create them. If you're looking for a W, they'll give you a W. If you want a bull pennant, they'll give you a bull pennant. You want an ascending triangle, they'll do it. Like I know guys who market make. We used to joke about this 3 years ago. It's funny. Like, what do you want to see? Let's see a bull pennant. And I would watch people like, oh, there's a bull pennant coming up, and we'd all crack up. It's a joke, right? It's funny, and I like, I used to laugh at people. They'd be like, "Oh, this is going to happen." I'm like, "Ah, you have no idea. That you don't even understand. This all, you're dealing with a market cap that's completely manipulable. You only need $1 million to, if you put 1 million in Bitcoin, you can move it around, right? It doesn't take that much to affect Bitcoin, right? A lot of guys, if you dump 3 mil, you can move it 2-3%. You can panic drop people. You don't even need a lot of money to mess with Bitcoin. Right? Bitcoin was at those times were very volatile. Like you could make all types of things happen, right? And as you know that, you're dealing with all this manipulation, you got to realize that the game is played in a certain way. Once you know that, you just let those ways play out, and this is all psychology. These are people, everyone's trading in psychology. Like, for instance, the Fibonacci's, right? Everyone knows that, once you have your Fibonacci's, you're getting through the what they call the golden channel, right? And you hop in there 618, you're 50, and then you're like, all right, let's just push into the 786, and then we're gonna break above that and get to the next target, right? And everyone knows that the hardest resistance mark to break is the 786. So if you get through the golden pocket and you're able to touch the 5, break above the 5, touch the 618, retest the 5, then everyone enters because they know that if it's a good percentage, the odds are 60% of the time it's going to go to the 786, right? So what kind of made me, laugh over the last year is that the next target point, would be the next, area. And then what people started to do was, instead of setting their profits or their take profits on the Fibonacci, like everyone's done for the last 70 years, all these new traders that have no experience were like, you know what? I want to make sure that people don't take profits on me. So I'm going to go a little bit lower and then a little bit lower. And now we're like halfway from now we're halfway down. So now the next target, if you're looking for the 786, you can go halfway down and get that target, because people keep inching the finish line further down, which is just taking from everyone's profits. Right? It's like hilarious. It's like, why didn't you just stay with the program? Why don't you just go to that line like everybody else has been doing for 70 years? But they can't even do that because they feel like, well, what if people start selling before that? Okay, I better go a little bit lower. And then people started going lower. Then after a couple months, people are like, damn, this shit ain't hitting that line. And then people went lower. And then people, oh shit, I gotta get lower. And now they're halfway down, right? So, people changed. It'd be great if it was a fucking AI robot and all you had to do is like, 786, there we go, right? And what happens is all these people change the way people trade because they make decisions to, change the system instead of just follow the damn thing, right? And like we used to, that's why when you look at Fibonacci, say, oh, we're going to come down here, we're going to touch the 161, right? And they're like, oh, beautiful, the 1.6% move, right? Those are actually percentages. So just so you know, like a half a percent, 0.5 is a percent, 0.618, it's just percentages, right? So
we use those quite a bit in what I do because our filters have to be, our flange has to be 0.145.
mhm, mhm.
So that I understand the
Yeah.
1,000, 100,000,
Right.
10,000.
That's all it is. So
I get
people,
you.
yeah, people would be like, all right, so we're going to take profit here. We're going to take it at uh, at the 89% mark. But then everyone's like, I'm gonna take mine at 88. Yeah. And then the next guy's like 87. And then all of a sudden the right mark was not hitting. So traders started moving it down because they realized that the unexperienced traders were taking profits early. And then everybody started hitting 87. And then some guys were like, oh, I didn't hit all the way. So then it's 86. And then it becomes a competition of who's taking their bag first, right? And they're like offsetting the Fibonacci. So you'll see things go and you're like, and that's why that system and that style, it already had issues where it's not always accurate, but now it's like least accurate because the more people you let in, the more people don't follow the system. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting concept as you move around how they manipulate it. But the people, they short themselves. So it's like you're watching all these people try to learn something, but then they then they decide they're going to change it because they're smarter than the guys who've been doing it. Right? So it's always the concept. Like that's what we're talking about. It's like, hey, if everyone traded the Fibonacci's correctly, then we could sit here all day and make money. The problem is that half of you people are changing the way the Fibonacci's are traded, right? You're taking profits early instead of you're taking profits at the 786 instead of letting it push through, retest the 786 and go on a run. So now we're getting half the pushes, half the value, half the runs. Then you panic and get paper hands and sell. Then you create a pullback that wasn't supposed to be there. And then all of a sudden you trigger all these other guys who have stop limits set up. And then everyone has to reset their order. And next thing you know, that's why things get ugly. It's because all the new investors have no idea what they're doing. They're too busy trading emotionally. Right? That's why when we put a system together, it was like, all right, we just wait for these things to come in, and then we take advantage of whenever the people decide to get excited or to panic, right? Because you never know. You know, used to be able to just trade like with normal traders. You'd have Fibonacci's, you'd have support lines, you have resistance, and now it's a free for all out there. You don't know when someone's going to panic. You don't know when, you have no idea. Crypto's a whole different type of animal over stocks. It's very there's a lot of manipulation, but there's also people.
As volatile as can be. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just
People.
and well, I don't see gains in the regular stock market as far it doesn't fluctuate as much as it does in crypto. And right now, with what I'm doing and how I am quote unquote investing, I'm doing the hold investing. I'm not doing any
Mhm.
trading, and I'm not seeing any gains right now. I'm actually in a hold because of the because of the spread. When you buy crypto, you're actually in a hold right to the jump because of the spread when you buy on Coinbase and all of that.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. The fees. The reason,
that's correct.
the
So
whole reason we
I'm
came to
I'm
crypto.
still I'm still in the hole on a few. So I'm looking to I guess you would say I don't call it diversify, but I'm looking to expand my
Yeah, because you need to be what's.
I guess my investing. Now
Yeah.
I want to move into other areas while I'm hodling.
Yeah.
While I'm hodling, I would love to do that because in the meantime, um, I can still be the profits that I make on trading, I can still dump back into my hodl.
Right.
Pretty much when I'm holding.
But
So
yeah, you want to
that's
accumulate.
the objective.
Right. You want accumulation, not hodl, right? Accumulation is where you buy the pushes and then you take the profits and then you buy the dip, and that way you're getting more coins for your money. And eventually, like we did a hodling, come here, boy. We did a hodling where we started off with quant was at like $79, and we started accumulation because guys don't understand the difference between hodling and accumulation. And we started with everyone bought 20 quant, and at the end of 4 months, everyone was above 220 quant. Right, so we 10x the coins that we had, even though quant ran up to like 300 or some shit, something crazy. But guys were taking, that initial investment, and they were able to, take that amount and see $2,000 turn into 20, $30,000. But they had so much quant now that they could actually sell and be like, man, I've 10x my amount. Like I had 20, now I have 220, right? So I can sell 100 for profit and then still have 100 more than I started with in my hodl, right? The power of that is when you start realizing that it's not about the amount of money you have, it's about how many pieces, right? It's like gold. If you had an ounce, yeah, they're only like, you're accumulating coins, right? You have to accumulate to make money, right? That's where the mistake is. It's not about hodling, it's about accumulation. So that same trade, right? That accumulation trade is the same exact setup, the same exact trade that we teach you in the basic trading. You just do it on a different time frame. So the same steps.
Looking at my road now, and you were talking about waiting for the three
Mhm.
reds or the three greens, whichever whether you're shorting or longing.
Mhm.
I'm looking at it, and I'm on IOTA right now. I'm trading you.
Yeah. So you see.
And it's interesting just on today's chart.
Mhm.
It's very interesting, and even these little indicators. It's pretty interesting because earlier in the day, it's I'm seeing very little movement up and down, but at the same time, uh, you still got three here, three there, and you only get that 1 or 2% like you were talking about.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm in. So right now, I'm in that.
I can see where that can make money, especially if you're leveraging. Now, do you have a specific leverage that you do on every one of them? Is it the same every time? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
So your leverage is always also based on you, right? So depending on how you execute trades, right? So the system is designed to adjust for your capabilities, right? Because everyone is slightly different, which is weird, even though we're all following the same pattern. But a lot of times what will happen is you can watch a guy and he has a particular rhythm that he gets into, and it's always the same. Because once he gets into it, he gets the same results. So we use leverage to actually adjust. It all depends on your mathematical side, right? Lowest low, highest high, and so forth. So we make adjustments to that as well. So we use the tools to make more money, right? So that's the beauty of it. So let's say that we're rocking and rolling and we're crushing, 75% of trade, but we're rocking out at something like a 50x leverage, right? You can if the trades that are slightly not hitting your target of 50, let's say that you're doing 10 trades and 5 trades hit 70% and 5 trades hit 35%, 40%, right? All you have to do is adjust your leverage from 50 to 60, and then now all of your trades will be winners. Right. So those are just pro tips, right? But at the end of the day, once you have a structure, how you're trading, when you're getting in a trade, why you're getting in a trade, then you can make these other adjustments to make yourself more money. But until you can't just, guys are adjusting leverage here and there, but they're doing different trades each time, and then they're punishing themselves because it goes against them, but it kills them. Right? It's all I laugh about it all the time. It's all systematic. Like it's just a job.
So
Like,
if say I start with 500 and using that system,
mhm.
and every day I spend it, and I won't be able to trade during the day. Unfortunately, I'll have
Yeah,
to trade midnight hours,
yeah,
which I'll come home. But if I do it 3 hours a night or 2 hours a night, realistically,
yeah. I mean, if you can, like here, if you can spend 4 hours a week, right? At the end of a month, you will be a profitable trader, right? Now, if you can dedicate 2, 3 hours a night and you're actually, putting in work, man,
oh,
I
that's
mean,
me.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
me. I don't know how to quit.
yeah. I mean,
That's I'm a guy that does not quit.
yeah, if you can put, 2, 3 hours a week, then I think I just changed it, but you can do it, baby. 2, 3 hours a week, you can crack the code in a solid, 5 months, and that gives you 5 months of making money, which will get you 30, 40, $50,000, even if you only had 100 or 200 to start with, right? So at the end of the day, if you can put 2, 3 hours a day and really like, get into the trading motion, I mean, you will not, the hardest thing is to where you find a rhythm, right? Because you're trading at a certain time, and certain times have certain, the aspects of the market. Is it the London hour? You're going to be trading more in the London hours, and you're going to be trading more at the end of the Asian markets, right? So the indicators are going to start to develop a pattern during that time that you will see because it's the same thing that you see every night. And then you'll be like, oh, you'll start to lock in on your time, right? And then once you have that, those hours that you're constantly seeding repetition, it's like building muscle, right? If you're in the gym every day doing the same sets, you're going to build muscle, right? You're going to get there, right? And that's the only difference. If you're taking an hour here, an hour there, and then you're, next week an hour, your brain isn't maintaining what you saw, right? But if every night you add an hour, as I tell guys, take an hour every night. If you take an hour every night just to see what's happening, your brain will start to lock in and be like, oh, 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 there it is. Yeah, perfect. Boom. Like you'll start to see it. Like you'll start to be like, oh, there's 15-minute moon, 15-minute trend is a 30. Oh, 30. Oh, there's a pump. Ooh, right. And then you've seen it over and over and over. And then your mind can then compute it and accurately do it. Right. That's the key. Right. So, that's why we have it where, within the first month, we take it slow. We don't even really talk about the guys that actually put in time, right? So if you take your time and you go slow, you've never traded a day in your life. 3 months later, you're a very profitable trader and you're on your way to 50 to 100,000, right? Now,
I'm a guy that's going to put in 2, 3 hours a night.
yeah,
That's just what I do.
yeah, and if you're doing that,
That's my mindset.
yeah,
I want to retire when I'm 7 years from now. I don't want to be working. I don't want to be doing anything.
I feel you. That's kind of like where it is.
With my crypto investment and with this combined and my work, I think it's very attainable if I stay locked in.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, when you have those times or you put those type of things in there, you're always going to get, what you're looking for out of the result. That's kind of like the best part about it is that you're building with yourself, right? So if you're putting that type of time in there, I mean, you're going to cut your time down from 4 months to a month. You'll be a profitable trader in a month. It's not that hard. That's the beautiful thing about it is that, it's really not that hard. If you're putting the time in finding trades, you're going to hit your trades. And the beautiful thing about being in the Discord is you got thousands of guys in there who are doing the same thing and they're all calling out the same alert and they're all calling out coins. And then we have coin alerts where the AI bots are calling out possible trades. So now you're getting all this information. So whenever you hop on, you just go, oh, all these coins are hot. And then you just go look. And all you have to do is say, okay, well, here's an alert. Here's the beautiful thing about the indicators is TradingView attaches to a Gmail or a Yahoo or whatever, right? An email. And then all you have to do is on that email, you create a folder where all TradingView information goes into. So that way, when you get an alert, the alert goes into your TradingView folder, and then you get on your cell phone, thank you, baby. You turn on notifications, and then all of a sudden you're doing work or whatever, and you get a notification. It's like, oh, 4-hour trend on IOTA, which I just got at 11:33, 1 minute ago, right? So let's say I'm at work. I turn around, I say, shit. I hop over, I go take a look, right? And I see that IOTA had my 4-hour hit, right? This is a big alert because IOTA hits a 4-hour. When it hits a 4-hour trend coming up, that means that it's actually picking up massive momentum. Right? So now I can just pop in, I look at my 15-minute, I got a 15-minute moon, positive volume, I can look at where I'm at, and if I place an order here, right, just the basics, I can get into a trade here while I'm at work, put my price label in, get into my trade, and be very confident with where I'm at. Or I can say, all right, well, let me take a look at the 3-minute, do a basic, look at it and say, okay, we're at $25.24. I'm going to put it for $25.17. And I'm just going to say, or 25.20, right? Because everything, it depends on which alert you have. And you just set it at that point and you're like, all right, if it goes back to 25.17, picks up my order. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So now you're at work, you place your two orders, you place an entry order, and then you place a secondary order, right? And then you put an alert for yourself, which would be like a 5-minute red moon. And if that alert goes off, that means you need to go look at your trade and start evaluating your closeout of your trade because things didn't go the way you wanted, right? So simple stuff. Yeah. Why would you cost average buy against your own money?
I was locked in on what you were saying. I absorbed quite a bit, but like I said, I'm so OCD. Sometimes I get too focused, and it'll take me away from the little things that really matter. So
Yeah. And that's all you do. So once you get those alerts, you set up, you always expect a pullback, right? That's one people never teach, right? Everyone's always teaching you how to trade, but nobody ever teaches you that it's okay not to be in a trade, right? So if you know,
you won't miss a trade because it's going to repeat itself.
always, like always, right? So here you have an alert on IOTA at 25.24, right? All it does on a quick 3-minute, I can see the last time it pulled back, it was 24.96. So if I take a 50% area, that means that my entry should be 25.10. So now if I'm getting into this, I can set my first entry there and say, okay, if it hits, fantastic. If it doesn't, then whatever, I'll catch it on when I get home. Because right now I'm at work. But the one thing I want to do is make sure I get my money's worth, right? Or you can be greedy and then take half of that and move it down to like 25, 05 and say that's where I want to get in, right? It doesn't matter if you don't get in, you're going to have another trade anyway. It's crypto. It's 24 hours a day.
Absolutely. Well, V, this is the good thing about where I'm at, and this is my mindset, and I think you understand the concept that I'm about to give you. As a student, and even all my coaches, they love me because right now, as a student, if I were to become a student, I can tell you now, I'm at a point where I'm a clean slate. I can't learn bad habits.
Yeah.
So what I learn now, and that's why I'm being very careful on what I'm learning and what I take in. Because right now, at this point in the stage where I'm at, I'm just learning the actual platform. I'm learning what everything means. I'm not learning any strategies. I've looked at a few, once again, because I don't understand the platform.
Yeah, and that's kind of like for that, that's kind of where it is, man. So, the whole thing is like when you come in, where you're at, and where you need to be, and then it's just the reason why it's successful is because we're really focusing on teaching you how to actually maneuver when you invest or trade, and then you have indicators that protect you from your own decisions, and then you can use all types of different styles if you wanted. You just apply the indicators to that style, and it just confirms what you're seeing. And when you can confirm it, then you can execute it because you're watching it in real time and you're like, okay, makes sense. Okay, that happened. Okay, perfect. Okay, that's what I was waiting for. And then all of a sudden the indicator's like boom, 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 you get an alert and you're like, exactly. And now you can trade without emotion.
Everybody doesn't make money trading. I don't understand yourself and
Yeah, 'cause they don't know how to, that's another thing is just they've never had someone, kind of like run the system, right? It's like this is a system, this is how it works, but they need repetition, right? People don't do the repetition to get the format. But once you have a pattern and you say, okay, this is how this is done. And everyone takes a course and they go do the course, and when there's all right, you do this, this, and this, and you're like, okay, and you just follow the rules, right? But when you have to do it yourself, you don't know how to make the rules because that's not what you're there for, right? So that's the problem is people are always kind of stuck in that middle piece where they can't understand how to evaluate or how to create a pattern or a step-by-step solution. That's what I'm saying. Like most people don't have the business background or the ability to understand of how to do product testing, business testing, or anything, right? And you should never do something unless it has a 80% chance of success, right? Like you have to do your numbers, right? If the numbers are, terrible, then why are you doing something that doesn't have any ratio, right? So when people tell me I trade bull pennants, and I say, well, did you ever Google the percentage that a bull pennant or a bull flag is accurate? And it's 64%. I don't know about you, but I'm not flipping a coin, right?
yeah, absolutely. That is the bare bones of that. 64% is no different than 50% in my book when you're talking about my money.
Right. That's right. And so that's kind of where when I talk to the guys, it's like, guys, you're putting your money on a coin flip every single time, and then you're expecting like, first of all, if you're going to do a 6 out of 10, then you have to accommodate your bag, your leverage, and you have to accommodate the losses to the wins. Now you got to have a mathematical equation that allows you to be victorious even with those odds. But people don't get that. They don't understand.
That's what you were telling me about the leverage. You adjust the leverage based upon your previous entry points and the succession or the lack of success of those entry points when you exit.
Right. So there's a lot of ways to adjust for your weaknesses, but they just don't understand it. So that's what we provide. That's what we do.
You're not making multiple adjustments. You're only adjusting the leverage, and you're not adjusting the
Right.
entry points and the exit points. You're adjusting
Right.
the leverage to compensate for the loss, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just like any other thing, right? You just
That makes
adjust
sense.
it.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah. It's simple, man. I mean, that's why, we spent, it's 3 years, 5 years total in the making, but the real focus has been the last 3 years on solving the basics. And the last year has been like kind of like where I've spent more of my time talking to all these people that have never traded a day in their life. And that's where the information comes from and, watching them trade. And then I spent like 3 weeks trading like them. And I'm like, I don't even understand what you're thinking here. But we were laughing about it, and I was like, "This is why you guys don't win." And I went out there and like was making terrible trades every day, and I was like, "What's the concept of this?"
Right now.
Yeah.
I'm looking at token metrics and I'm on it's got two different categories. You can either log on and look at it from a trader aspect or an investor aspect. I'm looking on the trader aspect, and this is what kind of confused me about the token metrics and kind of swayed me against doing the trading, and I went to the investor side. But on the trader index allocation,
Mhm.
it's showing, and you're going to laugh at this because I laughed when I seen it. Um, they're saying that the best cryptos to trade at this moment on the Fed, they're saying Pepe token,
Wow.
And I just wanted to give you those so you could
Oh,
maybe
hold on,
look
hold
at
on.
those
All right, hold on.
when you're live tonight,
Okay.
and kind of not necessarily trade on them, but
Let me.
those would be. I'm just giving
Yeah.
them to you so
I
you
like
can look
that.
at them. Maybe that would help you out.
Okay, let's go through them again. All right. So they said Pepe.
They said Pepe
Okay.
and
Banana gun. Okay.
guacamole.
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 Do they have the trade the ticker?
Okay, hold on. Let me look at it. I'll find it for you. Give me a second. GUAC. Oh, here we go. All right. Now the ticker is GUAC.
GUAC. Okay.
Correct.
What's banana gun?
Banana guns is. Let's see. Let me go here. Banana guns is. It's just banana.
Okay, banana.
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 Yep.
All right, I know Pepe. All right, what's the other one?
Lootbot, LOTBOT. And of course, you know what Solitis AI is.
What's the ticker on that?
Solitis AI is AI Tech. Let's see. Solitis AI Tech. Let's see. Yeah, it's AI Tech. That's their ticker. And their trading view chart, I'm looking at it. It's pretty impressive as far as the movement. I mean, it is just cranking.
So take a peek at it.
There's just a few for you to look at, and maybe before you're live tonight, because I will be watching. You'll see me log on there. The other one is CETUS Protocol, CETUS Protocol.
Hold on, let me
Yeah,
look at
their ticker is CETUS, CETUS.
C.
CETUS.
All right. All right, so let me look at the AI tech, right? So for us, the basics would be this, right? So the first thing is we look for our 1 hour, which we have. So, all right, we had a buy, we had a pullback, and then that big liquidity grab that they grabbed out of everybody. All right, so let me see here. So 30 minutes. All right, so we went into a short position, and so right now tech just went for a long position at 0.066. That's when our indicator went off. So after that liquidity grab, it stabled, and we just got a buy zone at that level there. So right now it's currently in a buy zone. So now we'd be looking at volume. It needs to pull back one more time here. So yeah, I would say that we're going to get the 15-minute pullback here, probably down to 6.7, and then from there it's probably going to bounce and make another run. On the overall, let's take a look here. On the overall, it has a lot of room here. It's probably going to do another. Oh yeah, this thing is heating up here. Let's see the 3 hour. Yeah, so right now they're getting a 3 hour trend, which should bring in a big move here. Plus they're bouncing off of their trend line. So the trend was 6.3.
Well, I get those every single couple of days. The trading, as the narrative changes, so does my trading on there. That's why I'm paying for this. Number one, I don't want to go to waste because I'm paying for it.
What is that a month for you?
That's cost me right at $200 a month.
Okay. Do they send, so you get a screen that you can look at and they kind of break down what they want to trade? Is that what they did give you?
1 second. My son just called up my
You good?
just connected to my
Your Bluetooth. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. It connected to the Bluetooth when you
Yeah.
come into the driveway. Now say that again.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you get them every couple of days, and it's a screen, like a simple screen that says these 5 are trading right now.
No, it actually gives me a graph. It gives me a circle graph and tells me how much percentage of each one that you should allocate. Okay, and I'll show you. I'll tell you. Do you want me to send you a screenshot
Yeah. So send me a screenshot like of the picture of the ones they're telling you to get, and then kind of like what they're showing you.
Yeah, and it gives you a percentage. It's saying Pepe, you should do 25%, Banana Gun 24.18. They're very technical with this. Guacamole 21.54. Lootbot should be 13.1. Aerodrone Finance 11.53, and so on and so forth. I'll take a screenshot of it so you can understand this, and I'm more than willing to share this with you. Because, like I said, this once again, my journey is going to be documented, and I'm gonna put a book out on this, and
Yeah, because we do.
somebody, because I know failure's not an option for me.
Yeah.
I don't know what failure and quitting is. It's just not a part of my DNA.
So we were looking at AI tech. So we were actually like teaching people on alerts, right? So because this is what other people, a lot of people do. They'll pay for an alert system, right? So what we started doing was I was telling everybody like, all right, so you find whatever alert you do, right? Do your alert thing, right? And then what we'll do is we'll turn around and when you get an alert, we'll show you how to set your indicator alerts to let you know when it's time to actually take advantage of the alert that you got. Right? Because everybody wants to, it's always like, find a better way to find a coin, find a way, to get an alert. What coins do I trade? What should I trade? Right? So it's always that, mix of getting information, right? So what we actually do is we turn around and we put you in a situation where at that point we just come in and say, okay, here's an alert that you're getting, right? And we're going to show you how to use your alert, right? And then once you do that, you kind of like set yourself up and you're like, oh, makes sense, right? And then the alert will go off and it lets you get an email, and that email will say, hey, your alert finally went off for your trade. This is where you'd want to make your trade. Like for instance, if you had this set up, you would have set this up to where the alert would have went off at for AI tech at 0066, right? So if you would have had the alert set up on there, you got an email alert, and then right now you'd currently be up 5%. Now I don't know. I don't normally. Yeah, go ahead. Now, no, I normally don't trade these type of coins because they don't, they're not in leverage. But if they're low caps like this or something like that, if they're moving well, then you can take advantage of them. You know what I mean?
I can tell you some other ones that probably would be in leverage. Now these are the investor tokens that they have. I'll send you a picture of this one as well. Now this is the format that I'm in right now, as far as putting my money in and holding on to them and waiting for the run. But they've got render. Everybody knows about that. Scale, Avalanche, Cronus, Cardano, Tron, Chainlink, Lojax, and Multiverse X. Those are that's the combination. Now they have a certain allocation, a percentage of allocation that you want to do for diversification to optimize your profits. I sent that to you. That one is the trading one I sent you. I'll send you this one as well, which is the investor one. I also get, I don't know if you know who Ian Molina is.
Ian Molina.
His name's Ian Molina. This guy, let me tell you about this guy. Just a phenomenal dude, man. He's from like Nigeria or some crap like that. I won't say Nigeria because I know that's not it, but he's somewhere over in Africa somewhere.
You're talking about he's on Instagram with glasses, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, that dude, just unbelievable.
Yeah, he does a lot of research.
Everything because he got hacked. Okay, he used to work for IBM. He was a programmer or something for IBM, and he quit the IBM job and got into the crypto market. And he lost everything. And the process that he used for analyzing these different companies, he understands tech. So that's one reason why I pay for his website. But he uses AI, but he analyzes tech because he was in the tech field, so he understands it.
Right.
But obviously his system works because he's launched it all and got it all back tenfold using the same process, using the same analytics or token metrics as he calls it. And I gotta tell you, every single pick that he's given me in his webinars, because I also get private webinars with him and stuff like that. We have a group of people and he does monthly webinars, and I'll share some of that with you as well.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of like with the indicators. Once you see how they set up, you know, you can like set an alert to get the best entry, right? Because that's kind of like the
a
key.
lot of the stuff that he gives us with the type of webinars are the new up and coming, like the initial token offers.
Yeah.
These are things that are just coming out that you can get in at the ground floor. I mean, just some amazing projects. I got in on Jupiter when it was not even a Jupiter, you know.
Yeah.
So the stuff that he has forecasted, it's phenomenal. His understanding, I like his understanding. You know, he's a very smart guy. He's kind of eccentric, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they, you know, that's what researchers are.
Yeah, absolutely. But he is totally focused on I like his want to help other people. He's a genuinely good guy. You know, he wants to truly help other people. Now, don't get me wrong. There is always we're all opportunists in our own way because that's human nature. That's just who we are.
Business.
But at the same time, his heart, you know, he truly wants to help people succeed and get ahead because he came from nothing. He came from the dirt.
Right.
You know, so I'm just impressed with his whole process.
I see him.
He's very analytic. I like that. You know, he has answers. You know, he's just not giving you fluff.
Right.
There's a reason behind it.
Mm-hmm. No, he's good at what he does.
And that's why I'm impressed with your process as well. You just don't give somebody, hey, well, this enter here. You give a reason why.
Right.
Give a reason why and what's happening, and then it just resonates. So
you got to have a process, you know.